Thank you for tuning in to our second series of Breadcrumbs podcast with me, your host, Barbara Smith. Gather around with your little ones because it's kids' story time. Hello, boys and girls, moms and dads, and everyone watching, wherever you might be. I wanted to come and let you know that decisions that we make in our life are very important, no matter how small or great they might be, because they can affect not only ourselves, but all of those around us. They can change the course of our life for a day, a week, a month, a year, and so we have to be very careful and make wise decisions. I'm going to tell you a Bible story about Elimelech. That's a big name, isn't it? And his family, his wife's name was Naomi, and he had two sons named Mahlon and Chilion. They lived in Bethlehem, Judea, and they were of the people of God, the Israelites. And their lives were going fine. Dad had a job. Mom did odd jobs around the house. The boys were probably in school, maybe even a little bit older, but still were at home with mom and dad. And they had to make a decision to move. Now, making a decision to move is not a very easy one. And children don't like it. I know you guys probably don't like it if you've experienced it, because you have to move away from your friends. You have to learn new things and people and places. And it is just so sad sometimes to have to leave people behind that you know, maybe even family as well. But they had to make this decision to move because there was famine in the land. Now, famine might be a big word for you or a new word for you. What famine means is that there was no rain, which means there was no food. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever done any gardening, tried to plant any vegetables or a flower or a tree. Sometimes they do that in schools, and the first thing they tell you is, now you need to water this plant a little bit every day, or at least once a week, or much more during the first couple of months, so that those roots can be strong and grow down into the soil, into the ground, right? But if there's no water, it's going to die. All living things need water, just like we do. We're living creatures and we need water to survive. Well, there was no rain. It was becoming drought. Drought means no rain. It's dry. It's crispy. The land is getting crispy. The crops are not growing, and so there is no food. So Elimelech had to make this very important decision to move. Probably a lot of the people were moving, and they lived in Bethlehem, Judea, and had to travel and move to Moab. Moab was not where the people of God lived. Moab was a strange land, but Moab had food. So they packed up their little Gucci bags. Maybe they had a yard sale, had to get rid of a bunch of things. That part is hard too, getting rid of things that you don't want to get rid of. Maybe your favorite toy or your favorite things that you cannot carry with you. You just don't have enough room. They get all of those preparations made, got their little suitcase, and so they had to hit the road. No, they didn't pull the car out of the garage and say, everybody hop on in, let's go. There were no cars. There were no public transportation, buses, trains, nothing like that, no trucks. So they had to either get on their mules, their camels, or guess what? Their two little feet. They had to walk. And they made the long trip to Moab, found themselves a little place, and decided to make their home there. They didn't know how long they would be. They probably thought it was just a temporary situation. We'll just go to Moab a little while so we can have food and we can have a place to live and thrive, and then we'll go back to Bethlehem when things are better. But they ended up living there a lot longer than they thought. Well, Milon and Chilion were getting older, and they did have to meet new people. They had to learn new ways. The dad had to find a job. The mom had to learn how to deal with the people of the land. And then, lo and behold, the boys found girls. Yes, they did. They found 2 girls, and they got married. The 2 girls they found, their names were Ruth and Orpah. Yes, the Bible has some funny names, but we have funny names now too. So we just have to learn somebody's name and accept it. And so Milon and Chilion married Ruth and Orpah. And they made their little house. They made maybe next door to Mom and Dad, who knows? Maybe down the street, maybe the next town over. We don't know, but they were all there together in the same vicinity, the same area. And they were living their best lives, right? Well, sickness came upon the family, and that's always very, very sad. We never know what to do when somebody gets really, really sick and they have to go to the hospital, have to get care, and we worry and we pray and ask God to heal them because we don't know if they're going to get well or when they're going to get well. Sometimes they're sick for a very long time and they get well. Sometimes they're sick for a very long time and they pass away. That happens. That's part of life. That's part of the cycle of life that God has created for His people. Well, they didn't have hospitals. They didn't have big clinics or walk-in, fast-paced clinics like we have here in Tennessee. They just had to take care of themselves. Maybe there were medical people they could call on to come to the house and look at them. But they didn't have all the technology we have. And so the 3 men, Milon and Chilion, married men now, and the dad, Elimelech, they all passed away. They all died. This was almost 10 years after they had moved there. Well, that left the 3 women, right? Naomi was much older now, and Ruth and Orpah, her 2 daughters-in-law. So she made a decision. She said, I've heard that everything is good again now in Bethlehem, Judah. I think I'm going to go home. I've lost my husband, I've lost my sons, and I think I will go back home to where some of my family still lives. She had to make that decision for herself because now she was a widow. Well, the 2 girls, Ruth and Orpah, were widows as well. And a widow means that you've lost your husband. A widower would mean a man has lost his wife. So all the men had died, and so she had a little powwow, a little conference, a little talk with her daughters-in-law and said to Ruth and Orpah, you don't have any children. You are still young. Why don't you go back to your families, wherever they are in Moab, in this area? Go back to your families, to your kinspeople, your relatives. Go back to them and you will be able to find yourself a new husband and be able to still have children. You're so young. And so Orpah said, great decision. I think I will do that. I have been homesick. I think I will go back and find my family, and maybe I will be able to find a new husband. And so Ruth said immediately, don't make me leave you. Don't stop me from coming with you and from following after you, because I want to go with you. And they had this conversation. Naomi said, no, go back home. Ruth said, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going with you. Ruth said, I will follow after you. Your people will be my people, will become my new family, and your God will be my God. Remember, I told you the people of Moab were not the people of the one true God. And Ruth had learned from Naomi about the one true God. And she wanted to go with Ruth. She did not want to go back home to her old ways. She wanted to go with Naomi. So Naomi said, okay, if that is your decision, then you can come with me. Make the trip with me, and we will see what happens when we get back home to Bethlehem, Judea. They said goodbye to Orpah. They packed their little travel bags, got rid of what they had to get rid of. Again, the same decision, having to move and having to leave everything behind again. But Naomi felt that that was the right thing to do. All the time when we make decisions, we need to think about it before we make our final decision, because it's going to affect those around us. Naomi's decision affected Orpah and also affected Ruth. At the same time, Orpah and Ruth were grown ladies, and so they had to really make their own decision as well. They said goodbye to Orpah, and they got on the road, and they made the long trip again back to Bethlehem, Judea, found themselves a spot close to their relatives and their family, into a place where Naomi felt more secure and more familiar with, back to her homeland again. And so their lives began, and Ruth began to take care of Naomi, who was a little bit older now, and started to try to find a job and try to find food for them and try to take care of Naomi because she was the younger one. So Naomi said, I have a kinsperson, I have a relative of mine who owns a field across the way. Why don't you go and see if you can find some wheat, some rye, some barley, some kind of grain, and bring that back to us, and we can sift it into flour. Remember the story about the little hen? We can thresh that wheat, we can grind it into powder, and we can make us bread, right? And so Ruth set out, and she went to the kinsperson, the relative, whose name was Boaz, and that was his field. And she began to look around, and she saw the harvesters were there, and she saw a little bit of corn on the ground, a little bit of wheat, a little bit of barley in the field, and she began to just put a little bit in her skirt or in her little basket that she had brought to take home to Naomi so they could make bread. Well, Boaz came out that day. He was looking at the field, looking at the people that were harvesting, taking a good look at his crops, and he saw Ruth. Oh, he got very curious. So he asked the people around, he said, who is this new girl? Who is this one that is picking up a little bit of barley and putting it in her little basket? That is Ruth. She is the daughter-in-law of Naomi, your kinsperson. He was really intrigued, and he really liked her. And so he said, when you see Ruth coming, put a little extra on the ground. Leave a little extra so that when she comes behind you, she can pick up more so that they will have plenty to eat. And so they did this for a while, for days and months. And Naomi said to Ruth when she came home in the evenings, she said, you're getting a lot of barley. Tell me the story. And they had a little chit-chat about Boaz and all the harvesters leaving extra. So one day Naomi said, when you go into the field, go later in the day, and when it is siesta time, relaxing time, and Boaz lays down to nap, go and lay at his feet. This was a custom back then, that you would lay at the feet of the person that you liked and that you wanted to submit to and that you maybe wanted to marry. And so she did what she was told by Naomi, and she went out, and when Boaz laid down to take a nap, she went and laid at his feet. She was the next of kin. She did not have children by her husband who had died. And so Boaz, being the next of kin, would be obligated in those days to marry her so that she could have children. And so he realized that, and they had talked and had a discussion, and she had taken off his shoe. This was the custom. So he realized that she was the next of kin, that he was obligated to marry her. He said, "Let me go and talk to my kinspeople, my elders, and see what they say about this. And if they are in favor of it, then we will see what happens." So he went, he talked to his elders, and they said, "Yes, you are next of kin, and you are obligated to marry Ruth so that she can have children, because she did not have children." So Boaz and Ruth got married, but they also were very much in love. Sometimes they used to arrange those marriages, and they really didn't like one another. So Boaz and Ruth got married. Yes, it was an arranged marriage like some of them were in the Old Testament, but they really liked each other as well. So that was an extra plus. And they began to have children. They had a child named Obed, and Obed had a child named Jesse when he got older. And then Jesse, when he began to have children, had a child who they named David. And David became king of Israel, and from David's family, from Ruth's family, Jesus Christ was born. And so Ruth made the decision to go back to Bethlehem, Judea with Naomi and follow her and follow her God. What a great decision that was, because she became the great-grandmother to King David, who was in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Because of her decision, the Savior was born. Never forget that your decisions are very, very important every single day, because you don't know who you're going to affect, who you're going to help, whose life you might save by making the right and good and proper decision in your life. Yes, your life might be a little bit smaller because you are younger and you might be a child, but you will grow into being a man or a woman that has to make very important decisions. And learning to make the right decision every single day now, learning to obey your moms and dads now, is going to be what teaches you to make the right decisions when you get older and when you grow up. And that is going to make an impact on people's lives and maybe even save somebody's life. I hope you enjoyed the story about Elimelech, Naomi, Mahlon, Chilion, Ruth, and Orpah. And I hope you'll join me again next time when we meet again for another story. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you for stopping by. That's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your friends. Until next time, bye-bye.